I think I'll take this moment to introduce Liz, who is presenting to us on impact of women's participation, community development, giving an African perspective. And I don't want to say more. She will introduce herself and say all the nice things she wants to say about herself. And after that, then you'll have the floor for 40 or so minutes. Then I will get into a discussion, but don't feel pressured. We have the time. Thank you very much. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking out time to be here, to listen to me present. I am Lizzy Ihekerenma Ewumi, PhD in sociology and a master's in social work, community development. I have an NGO. I operate my own NGO in Nigeria, where we take care of streets, children, street people that don't have enough to eat. We get funds together, and I'm a co-founder actually. We try to help them pay their bills, get them into school, sort out some of their little problems, and then get them moving back to society. That's basically what I do, alongside other consultancy jobs that I have to do. I'm glad to be here to present. Fortunately, I had to leave my base to travel to the US, so I'm not really very adjusted, but I will try my best this night. And then I have a little bit of, please pardon me, let me get something out of the way on my screen. Is it? Is it full screen? Okay, now thank you. So the topic I'm here to present this morning, well, I don't know whether I said good morning to everybody. I'm sure everybody is in the morning, wherever you may be. The topic I'm presenting this morning is the impact of the changing roles of women in community development in Africa. And somebody will be wondering why a woman is presenting this. I think I'm in a better position as a woman to present this topic to you. And you will not be surprised if I'm here to, say things that will encourage women or say things that are in line with what women would like to hear. Basically, let me start with the introduction and the background of this topic. Can I have the first slide, please? Now, in every society, we all know that inequality exists between men and women. This is just the background to tell you where I'm going. Everywhere we know, women are seen as less. They're less in value. They are taking, this is all from beginning. Women are not to be heard. They are not to be seen. They are not in any way able to function, so to speak. And this undervaluing women has created a problem even in the communities, even in the things that they do. But behind the background, women do a lot more. They do a lot. Most of their jobs are unpaid. Most things they do are not recognized because of the social status hanging around them. Right there in Africa, we have a huge population of women. Women are almost 50% of the population. That is half, 50 men, 50 women. And can you imagine if you try to neglect almost 50% in things concerning the society? That's a huge mistake. And this is where we have to lay emphasis. Women should not be sidelined any longer. This weaker position that they find themselves in is connected with their being seen as wives and bearers of children. Women are not, recognized in any other way, but you have children, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a nurturer, you stay in the kitchen, you cook, you farm. But seeing women only in this light is something that needs to be reconsidered. Can I set the next slide, please? In every country or community, there is a need for development. What is the essence of development? Is to improve economic well-being and the quality of life of every nation or community. Development is a very necessary aspect of growth of any nation. And in every community, there are men and there are women. Like I said earlier, trying to sideline women is a huge mistake because they are part and parcel of every community. Quite recently, women are getting more involved in contributing to development in all African nations. And this is showing that their status is gradually changing. If this were not so, I would not be here doing what I'm doing right now. Women are leading in finding solutions to problems. Just like the nurturers that they are, women are change agents. Women adopt new, they are easy to, they are stronger. They are more tenacious in many things. They can multitask. Women are agents. They adopt new agricultural techniques, decision-making styles at home. They are first responders to disasters when it strikes. However, there is a basic problem right here, which we are going to identify, and that is lack of education. Education is key to any part of development. And that is why a lot of women empowerment programs are in process. Why? Just to make sure that women are educated, to fill up the gap. Next slide, please. And now I move to women empowerment. Why do women need to be empowered? Like I mentioned earlier, I said education is key. Women need to be empowered because they are trapped in the life that they may not even have chosen by themselves. Women are trapped in life of dependency. This life of dependency disadvantages them, not only them, but their families and the communities. There are different barriers that hold women down. Women don't have access to land. Women don't have access to skill training, no access to information, very minimal access to education. Despite ongoing initiatives designed to target major issues like education, inequalities, and so on, to bring up women, women still continue to face notable disadvantages. The concept of empowerment of women is not a new thing. Empowerment means promoting a woman's self-worth. It means ability to help a woman to determine her self-worth, ability to make her know her choices, to know that she has a right to influence social change for herself and others. Women's empowerment is a key part of correcting the clear imbalance that girls and women continue to face across the world. Empowering women is essential to the health of every community because it accelerates thriving communities. Slide 5, please. This next one. The next slide. No, sorry. Go back to the, I think that's the, slide 5 here. In line with this empowerment, there is this great body, the United Nations body. They have made significant progress in advancing gender equality by empowering women in Africa. If we remember the Beijing conference in the 90s, there's the Convention for Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and a lot of other conferences held in Africa, in Senegal and so on, to ratify the Beijing Convention. There's this United Nations Women, which is a body of the United Nations as well. They are doing a lot to empower women in Africa. The United Nations Global Compact and UN Women created 7 principles of women empowerment. The first one, they create high-level corporate leadership for gender equality. Principle number 2, treat all people fairly at work, respecting and supporting non-discrimination and human rights. Number 3, they ensure the health, well-being, and safety of all workers, whether they are male or female. Number 4 principle is to promote education, training, and professional development for women. 5th one, implement supply chain, marketing practices, and enterprise development that empower women. The 6th one is to champion equality through community initiatives and advocacy. Number 7 principle is to measure and report publicly on progress to create gender equality. All these women empowerment initiatives are all essential for the support of the United Nations SDGs. Next slide, please. In empowering African women, the United Nations women have, in collaboration with various governments, been involved in promoting women's participation in politics. They have also prioritized training women as mediators to encourage them to participate in peace processes. They have also taken interest in the provision of adequate services for gender violence survivors. Also, they have also paid visits. You see that United Nations, they always pay visits to every country to ensure the compliance of these things. Just a few examples of what they've done in support of African countries. For example, in Tanzania, through the UN, the Ministry of Community Development and Gender and Women groups were established, and they have contributed in the elimination of harmful practices against women and girls. In Liberia, they have suspended the practice of female genital mutilation. In Kenya, they've committed the government to end gender-based violence and female genital mutilation by 2026. Also in Sudan, they have tried to eradicate every form of discrimination against women. In Uganda, they contributed to the capacity building of women on financial literacy, training on value addition, group dynamics, and other skills. In Somalia, they have created opportunities for climate security, climate smart agriculture, livelihoods, and business skills for women. In Nigeria, they have also focused in addressing low political representation of women through mainstreaming gender equality in the ongoing constitutional reform ahead of 2023 election. In Nigeria, they've also addressed economic empowerment of women. This is just to tell you all that the UN and the UN women have done in trying to empower women. Next slide, slide 7. Now, let me go to the changing roles of women proper. All I've been saying is just to let you know how women need to be empowered and what the United Nations have done in that aspect. When we talk about changing roles of women, we are going to ask ourselves, what are the basic roles of women and how are these roles changing today? You and I know that the basic role of a woman is to have children, to be a mother, to be a wife, to be a nurturer, a manager of family income. But nowadays, most of these traditional roles are changing. These roles are changing because a lot of women are now, getting more educated, they're getting more jobs. The roles are changing as well because most of the men are now helping out. Initially, everything is for the woman to do. But right now, you can see female-headed households. A lot of women are doing jobs that hitherto they were not doing. And women are even recently combining roles. They still do the work of a mother, work of a wife and everything, and they still try to participate and contribute to the community. Women have always played a big role in the sustainability of any community, and their role in community development can never be overemphasized. Women have always been involved in rural development. Why am I saying this? You can see that more women are in the rural areas because when there's a cause for migration, a lot of men leave. Then you find out that women and children are left behind, and they're the ones in the community, involved in agriculture, involved in all sorts of things. So they have always been there. They have always been part of the rural development. They have always been the head of households when the men leave. Unfortunately, for so many years, the importance of women's contribution has been overlooked. Women are denied opportunity due to cultural setup. In most cultures, women are not given attention to in terms of sharing of land, assets, and so on. Cultural barriers, patriarchy, which we know exists in African society. The man is seen to be the head of the house. The woman does not have any say, and nothing, no matter what she does, she still remains where she's supposed to be. However, empowerment programs for women have yielded improvement in the quality of life and participation in community development. Like I said earlier, when I mentioned the United Nations and so on, and the way they want to empower women. In this slide, I want to lay emphasis on the definition given by community development as, rooted in the belief that all people, men and women, organization and all, should have access, rights, and opportunity to contribute to community development. Women in Africa have risen as leaders in driving emergency responses. Quite recently, you can see a lot of women are coming up as leaders. Women are moving up in politics and so on and so forth. For example, the WHO regional office in Botswana has a woman leader. During the COVID, she was the one leading the response in Africa. That's a woman rising up during emergency responses. The rights of women are now also being pursued more than before. And like men, women also now make major life decisions. Women can make decisions on dowry issues, on domestic violence. They are speaking out on sexual abuse. It wasn't like that before, but now their rights are being, focused on. Also, the United Nations World Conference of 1975 even declared a decade for women. That was in 1976 to 1985. That's to tell you that, women's rights are being looked into. Next slide, please. Now, let me look at the roles of women in community development. Let me take the first one, women as educators. For any form of development, education is key. We all know that. Education is crucial to every economic growth. Education helps to remove illiteracy, unemployment, poverty, and improves the standard of living. Therefore, educating a woman, you can tell what it can do to the economy and the community as a whole. In the past, women were ignored in the development of educational systems. No education allowed for the girl child. Right from when a girl child is born, through socialization process, she's made to know where she's supposed to be. The boys are better, are picked up for education. Some families, they tell you that the girl child will get married and get out and so on. So there's no need to train her. However, women's role in education is very important. It's good to know that a woman from home is a teacher. She's the one that provides education for the children. She raises the family. She knows what to do. Therefore, providing education for a woman will raise the status of the girl child. It will reduce rapid population growth that we're having recently. Even it will help in environmental protection. The need to bridge the gender gap in education has led to a significant development in the inclusion of women and women's rights in key decisions in the education arena. An example is the Maputo Protocol, which is a protocol on the human and people's rights of women in Africa. Most African governments have also developed policies that recognizes roles of women in education. Some countries have appointed women as heads of learning institutions, to tell you that most countries are now trying to make sure that women are part of the education system. But there's a good progress. However, it's not enough. Countries like Kenya, I know there's some universities in Kenya that have, run by women. In Nigeria, quite a number of them, vice chancellors are women, and in other countries. Going by the African Education Research Database, it shows that out of 2,510 African-led studies, only 32% were led by women. Just very poor. Across sub-Saharan Africa, women constitute only 24% of academic staff and 2.5% of vice chancellors, according to UNESCO 2019. In Ghana, we have only 8% of women professors. In Nigeria, only 17%. This is very low. So this is a call to improve women in the education system. Next slide, please. Let me look at the role of women in the workforce. Because a lot of women are being educated recently, they are getting more jobs. And as women get more jobs, they are transforming communities. When you train a woman, you train a nation. Quite recently, women are, owners of big businesses. There are women entrepreneurs everywhere. However, they face challenges at work because they are still seen as the weaker gender. Women have improved in the workforce. Many of them are employers of labor. If you look at the 2022 Forbes Women, I had to look at it, the leading women summits, it shows that only in countries like Botswana has 38.5% businesses owned by women. In Uganda, you have 38.4%, in Ghana, 37.2%, South Africa has 21.9% businesses owned by women. I couldn't get figures for other countries, especially Nigeria, where I belong. Next slide. As contribution to community development, a number of women practice what we call cooperation. Women in the workforce, they practice cooperation. They take up small-scale activities in the informal sector. They pool their funds together, they share, they help one another. Just, exemplifying the spirit of Ubuntu, which we all know about. Let's look at the role of women as leaders. In the past, leadership was seen as for only men. Same issue of patriarchy. How can a woman's voice be heard? A woman is only supposed to be seen and not heard. Women can never be leaders, but this has changed. Women's attachment to home makes them good leaders. How? Because they're more sensitive and they pay more attention. I mean, when a woman is in charge of almost everything in the home front, what will not make her to be a good leader? And today's women leaders are even more tenacious than before. Why? Because they have education backing them up. They are mobilizing the global climate movement, pushing for social protections, addressing issues like COVID-19, dismantling systemic racial discrimination. However, equality is still very far off, and progress on women's participation in decision-making is too slow in Africa. Next slide, please. Looking at the contributions of women in community development, I want to look at the women's contribution in politics. Women have always been involved in politics right from the pre-colonial days. All over the world, we have seen record of great women in the past who have contributed to rule the world. I mean, examples abound, I'm not going into any of them. In Africa too, we have lots of women in the past. We have those queens in the north, in Nigeria and so many other places. The women have been there. They have also been disadvantaged in participating. And all over the world, women's participation in politics is far less than 50%. What is the reason for this? Same thing, entrenched patriarchy. There are restrictions in electoral frameworks, restrictions everywhere that will not allow a woman to participate politically. It's also very difficult for African women to rise to power and remain there. Why? Because of their roles. They are traditionally expected to be in the home. They cannot remain there. Even when you give a woman a political office, the role as a mother and the traditional role that she's meant to be, we have to clash with it. Next slide. Some of the instruments, laws, and policies in Africa committing towards equal and effective participation of women in politics include, number one, the Maputo Protocol, which I mentioned earlier. This is a protocol that is, geared to rights of women in Africa. The second one is the Pan-African Gender Project, Women in Political Participation. Very importantly, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 5, which talks about equality. Next one is the African Union launched the African Women's Decade, 2010 to 2020. Another one is International Women's Day, which is every year. It's a global day celebrating women's achievements in social, economic, and political spheres. All these are some of the instruments that are committed to increase women's participation in politics. Next slide, please. There has been commendable progress in political participation and presence in Africa. Let me give you a few examples of some countries in Africa that has tried to make sure that women come up politically. Rwanda has 56% of women. It's actually the first African country to exceed 50% women representation in politics. Namibia 46.2, South Africa 44.3, Angola 37.3, Uganda 31.8, Tanzania 30, Burundi 30, Kenya 9%. Quite recently, in the elections in 2022 in August, there was an increase in women MPs in Kenya. From 23 in 2017, there are now about 30 women MPs in Kenya government. Nigeria, 7%. Nigeria has not reached the 30% affirmative at all. It's very poor in Nigeria. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. No, sorry, the one before that. I'm seeing it just a little bit. Okay. African nations that have experienced conflict have made more constitutional and legislative changes related to women's rights than other African countries that did not experience conflict. This is according to Ramutu 2020. The 21st century began to see the democratically elected African women heads of states. We have the Liberian president, Ellen Johnson. We have the first woman prime minister of Namibia, Amadila. We have the president of Mauritius. We have president of Ethiopia. And also in the Seychelles, we have a gender balance since 2018. Next one. Let's look at women's contribution in agriculture. There's no gainsaying that half of the world's women are farmers, workers, and entrepreneurs, especially in Africa. Like I mentioned earlier, I said it's very natural because as men left for the cities, women were left behind. So we have a lot of women farmers. In almost all developing countries, women make essential contributions to agriculture and rural economic activities. A large percentage of food produced is by women. In some cases, women make up 50% of those in agriculture, and they own 1/3 of all the SMEs that we know about. Yet, in all this, women have less access to agricultural-related assets than men. And the extent to which women and men can access and benefit from productive resources also differs. The low levels of education and limited access to markets have also contributed to the low productivity among female farmers. However, many governments of African countries have made training programs available to teach climate-smart farming practices to women. For example, in Kenya, there's this Kenya Agri-Productivity and Agri-Business Project. It's called CAPAP. This is what government is doing to help women. In Somalia, the UN Women and Ministry for Agriculture trained women on agri production and savings and supply chain. In Nigeria, both private and the government organizations are trying to empower women. I know of the alluvial agriculture that works with MasterCard to support 65,000 female farmers. The USAID also assists women that are producing rice in Nigeria. In a nutshell, women around Africa are transforming agriculture to become more resilient and sustainable. Women are not only contributing to agriculture, but also in research. They are key in research. They are strongly influencing the adoption of agri-biotech in Africa. A good example is in Uganda. Dr. Priva Namanya, she leads Uganda's banana research program at National Agricultural Research Laboratories at Kawanda, while Dr. Barbara is also championing the adoption of agri-biotech in Africa. What they're doing, they sit there in the lab and they try to make, these GMO crops. They're the ones behind these things. The efforts of these women have led to several African countries' approval of the cultivation of GMOs. Next, gender gaps in agriculture. There are gaps in agriculture in these following areas: in land. Of course, we already know why it is like that, because of patriarchy. Few women are holding land. Women don't even have access to land. I know a lot of places in Nigeria, a woman cannot have land assigned to her. This can be reversed by having reforming laws that guarantees equal access to land. In terms of labor markets, you can see that farms run by women, they have fewer labor. And the only way to get out of this is to raise human capital by education. Financial services, access to credit is poor. Women don't have access, no money, no finances available to buy their materials and to cultivate their farms. Education is another problem. Women are lagging behind in education. More men are educated. Women groups can help to pull confidence. Technology. The use of chemical fertilizers is poor for women. They don't have access to that at all. That should be made more available. Climate change as well. Drastic weather changes affect women. For example, look at the COVID-19. It threw a lot of women off balance. Most of their crops, they could not sell because of the restriction of movement. Next slide. Talking about women organizations and their contributions to community development. A women organization is an association of women who have come together for their own interest and that of their community. We have these women groups. Women come together in a group. They try to help one another. Such groups are like health groups. They have self-help groups. We have them in Nigeria. We have them everywhere. We have the ones we call Women in Community Development. We have CWO. We have African Women Development Fund. We have Women's Climate Centers International. All these are women bodies. The contributions of women groups in community development projects can bring about significant positive changes. One specific type of women group in sub-Saharan Africa is the savings group. That's a very common one. It's also in Nigeria. These saving groups are common, and they're a way that women, pull money together. One such one is what they call the village savings and loans. They provide people, no matter how remote, they provide them money, access to small amounts of capital on low, flexible terms. They give them loans at very little cost. They try to help other women. They try to help them to meet up their needs, help them in their businesses and so on. This is a woman's group. There's also the other ones that we call the cooperatives. Next slide, please. The cooperative groups also exist in Africa. Women cooperatives is a community development intervention strategy to effectively transform poor households. The promotion of women as key drivers of these cooperatives links with community economic development for sustainable livelihoods. These cooperatives exist in some African countries like Tanzania, Kenya, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria. And they play a key role in helping the unemployed women to break the cycle of poverty by tapping into their individual group and community resources. Next slide. I have a very popular example of a women group in Nigeria, in the eastern part of Nigeria. It's called the Women August Meeting. These women meet in August of every year. It's a pulling together of women from the eastern part of the country. They represent the sociocultural, political, and economic development initiative of women within the public sphere. They regard the idea of August meeting as a platform to make their contributions to the development of their communities. These women come together every August of every year. They go to their back home, wherever they are, whether you're in the north or in the south or in the east, you need to go back home in August every year. They meet together, they pool funds together, they help, try to help the communities. They build town halls, they repair roads, and so on. They help the women that are in the village to be able to sustain them. These are what they do. Another one that I know about is that of the Community of Wives of Lagos State Officials. This is a community-based gender organization working to complement the effort of the state governments to promote child health care, empower women to discover their hidden treasures, and protect the environment. They also offer free medicals and access to free health care to everybody. Slide, next one, please. I got another example from Kenya. It's called the Femnet. It's a Pan-African feminist and membership-based network in Nairobi with over 800 members. This organization promotes women's development in Africa. It facilitates and coordinates the sharing of experiences, ideas, information, and strategies for human rights promotion among African women's organizations through networking, communication, capacity building, and advocacy. Another one is the Women's Climate Center, which I mentioned earlier, WCCI. It's a network of women. They are women development professionals in Uganda. They're also in Kenya, they're in South Africa. These women create climate centers to empower women to become climate movement leaders. Next slide. I want to talk about the barriers to effective participation of women in community development. And I take a hint from the one presented by Ijere, 1992. The very first barrier of a woman is their perception of their role. The men perceive women as less than any other thing. There's a bias against women, and this relegates them to the background. Women's efforts, they never last. No matter what a woman does, it will not last because she doesn't have enough access to power, no access to finances, no access to education. And then all she does is just to be dependent on the man. Second one is the sex stereotype, just another barrier. Right from socialization, the roles are believed to be different. A girl child is supposed to do this, a boy child is supposed to do that. And this goes on to affect them and their contributions in the community. The next one is institutional constraints. I mean, I've mentioned it earlier, lack of access to education. It's a basic factor, it's a basic barrier to women's contribution. Next one is non-consultation of women. Women are not consulted at planning stages of development of communities. Of course, why? Because of patriarchy still. They're not informed. It's only when there are errors that they are made to know. Next one is lack of initiative. Women's lack of initiative will always reduce them. Women refuse to assert themselves. They are so overdependent on their husbands. Most of them, no matter how educated they are, they still want a final say from the husband. So this keeps them down from contributing. Religious beliefs, we all know where that is coming from. Some religions don't want women to participate at all. They don't want their women to be seen outside. We know these religions. Another basic restriction or barrier that women have had recently is the COVID-19, which has restricted movements, affected supply and production, affected women increase. And then in every area, it has also heightened the cases of domestic violence. That's what happened during the COVID time. Lastly, women's overrepresentation in the informal economy. When we say informal economy, I know you know what I mean. Unpaid work area. Women do so much that you cannot quantify it. This area is the least remunerated. Women are not paid. So the best thing to do is to lay emphasis on this informal economy. Next slide. And I think that is the suggested solutions right now. Some of the solutions I'm suggesting right here is that women should be incorporated into the productive sphere through access to resources like finances and physical capital. There should be increased attention on the informal work, like I mentioned earlier. Informal work, this is the centrality of every African economy. Pay more attention to the informal work of women. Get them properly remunerated. Number 3, there should be enhancement of status of women. When a woman's status is enhanced, it will boost the economic growth. Enhancing a woman's status will overcome poverty. It will help population. How will it help population? Rapid population growth will be reduced. When you increase her status, when you get her educated and you get her to find a job, it will help. The next one is work opportunities must be available in order to empower women economically. Responsibilities for domestic work must be shared. Legal barriers to women participation must be removed. Technology should be made available to women to help them up in their jobs, in their traditional roles, to give them time to work. Responsibilities for domestic work must be shared. I say it again. Most men should be made to help with the burdens because a woman combines both roles. Last but not the least is to monitor the implementation of the affirmative action by political parties and other institutions. They can do this by setting up agencies to monitor the compliance. And with this, I think that women will be encouraged to participate more in the community. Let me conclude by saying that this study has provided a reliable platform to stably argue that women play a vital role in community development in Africa. The contributions of women in socio-economic development is being felt and recognized all over the world. Women have recently made significant contributions in combining the roles of motherhood with that of participating in socio-economic development. Despite all these known contributions, African women are still being discriminated against as they are never given equal opportunities with their male counterparts to participate and fully contribute to the development of their country. Women play a vital role in community development in Africa. These contributions should not be neglected. And with this, I want to say thank you for listening. I must have been rushing it, but I believe you picked one or two things from what I've presented. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Liz, for a great presentation. We could give Liz a round of applause in appreciation of our work. So as Liz catches her breath, possibly we could post our comments or questions on the wall, on the chat wall. And then of course, I'll open the floor for any interventions arising from the presentation. Quite an extensive one, quite an extensive review of what is happening with the status of women in the African continent. And of course, issues are still being raised. That of course, there is a traditional roles of women. And then Lisa has painted a picture where these roles are transforming as the sphere of women's operation moves from the domestic front, from the household and from the nurturing role, which is largely biologically based or nature-based to other socially determined roles. And this is where now again the transformation comes in. Of course, there's quite a lot that is again is coming through in terms of the statistics, in terms of how far women have come in terms of claiming equal footing or equitable footing in their participation in the societal affairs and also in their participation in community development spaces. Of course, what is important right from the start, Liz indicates that the place of women is very important if we're also going to talk about healthy communities, which basically is our area of concern. And as we talk about healthy communities, then we're also talking about a situation where then everybody's place and everybody's role is very clear. And of course, then the balance of the same is observed so that then each and every member of society then can make their reasonable contribution for the transformation of our communities. The statistics have come through, of course, and they're indicative that there's still a lot of scope, a lot of groundwork to be covered. The question is, what needs to be done? Of course, Liz has indicated a few interventions and including policy instruments that have been put in place but there's the statistical representation still is quite challenging. Possibly if we did a qualitative analysis, maybe the situation might be completely different. But you could start by responding to what Janine has put on the chart. How do we effectively include men in the work of equalizing the role of women so that we can avoid the dichotomy of us versus them, which to a large extent is what has historically been the feminist kind of forte, and the more so when you talk about the radical feminists, who for them, they are very clear where they are and who is the enemy, quote unquote, if you allow me to use that word. Thank you. Over to you, Liz.
Janine said, how do we effectively include men in the work of equalizing the role of women? What I feel is this has been ongoing. Men know, they know the effect or the impact that a woman has. Right from the house, right from the home, a man knows the place of the woman. You know, like this adage that says a woman is the neck, while the man is the head. The men are aware that a woman can contribute a lot. So saying that we should, you know, include them, they know that they should be included. There are policies. The only way to do this is by the policies that I've talked about. Let there be monitoring. Let there be assessment of these policies. It's not just like saying a man should understand that. They will not. This is a patriarchy. It's ingrained in the society. It's there. How many men will you tell to work with you? There just has to be laws and policies put in place. That's what I think. The laws have to be there and monitored for compliance. So that's what I can answer. It's not a battle of us versus them. No, this is not a battle. This is trying to make them understand that a woman, I mean, imagine a women population being almost like 50%. Neglecting 50% is, I mean, how many men are going to do it? Let women be free to be educated. Let women be free to act. Include them in everything. I mean, that is the best I can say.
Thanks, Lizzy. I think I hear you, and obviously that is the way forward. My question would be, who are the ones who are meant to be monitoring those laws? Because if we have men who are more in positions of power and authority, why would they implement a law and monitor a law which is not sort of seen as in their favor, if you think of it like Daniel was saying in terms of the kind of us versus them thing? So my feeling is just, if you're wanting to change something, there are two sides to the gender coin, and we should rather be getting both sides involved and using the best of their strengths and using the best of their capabilities to come up with a joint solution that both parties feel is suitable and is preferable for everybody, than pushing from one side. If anything that you're pushing, there's a resistance, and when there's a resistance, there's an inequality, and that's why we are not getting anywhere. And I think that's where the problem is. And yes, women need to be stronger and so on, but they are constantly pushing against the same patriarchy, the same types of ideas. And my feeling is just that we need to change those ideas and pull the men onto our side, as it were, and say, come on, guys, we're in this together. Let's all build a stronger community for all of us, using all of our strengths, using the best of what we all have, because in the end, we would all benefit, rather than having it as a fight, because a fight is not getting us anywhere.
It's not getting us anywhere. Yeah. Can I say something? Right from socialization, maybe we should begin from that level. So we sensitize, upcoming couples, people, to begin to, reduce the way they look down on the girl child. There should not be separation of roles. If you separate a role and you say a woman can do this, a man can do this, at most times it's not even good for our male children, because they grow up, they don't even know what to do. You understand me? So let us start from the basics and begin to sensitize families, begin to make these things known. we're not talking about this generation now, but what about the ones to come? If they follow what is going on right now, it's going to continue. That's what I want to add to that.
I agree with you. And I think it starts in the home. I mean, yesterday I went and did some early Christmas shopping with my husband for our grandchildren. And he went straight to where all the cars are. And he bought a nice little truck and a trailer and a tractor for my grandson because they live on a farm. And then he said, what should we get for the granddaughter? And he went straight to the little soft dolls and the, and the little cute things. And I was still with the trucks. And I said, but you know, she loves being on the farm. She follows her father on the tractor. Why don't we get her a tractor as well? And it's that kind of change that has to happen within every home, within every individual, so that we create that kind of equal idea of men and women.
That's right. It's equal idea. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And
thank you.
And Rita is added that possibly the laws are there, but then the whole issue of awareness about the laws and the operations, that is also possibly a problem, because she's indicating the case of Kenya where the law of succession allows women to own land, to inherit land. But that's the law, but the practice on the ground is another story. It's because of the issues of low levels of awareness of the same, and also the ability even now to make the claims under the law. And that's again an issue that that's a problematic. Linda, you want to make a comment on what you have put on the wall in terms of elaborating your suggestion?
Okay, I just wanted to add, like, these men of us need education, in that they need to know the causes and the effects they cause to women when they do one or two things to women. Maybe they deny them the opportunity to get power. So it's just educating them and creating that awareness that women are also important in the society. Yeah.
Okay, I'm reading some of what has been posted on the chat, and it's a discussion that is going on. And Okezie, maybe you can verbalize it and put some kind of flesh in what you're saying.
Yes, I think. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lizzy Ewumi. That was a pretty wide-ranging assault on a serious problem. What I was asking was, because it's a problem that, from that presentation, that presents in a sort of multifaceted way, approaching it that way, attacking all fronts simultaneously, might dissipate the efforts to get results, or might minimize the impact of results. I was wondering whether it might be better to select and prioritize key areas of impact and then concentrate on those. I've made two suggestions there. One is maybe focus on promoting and supporting women entrepreneurs at a micro level and building that up, so that, because women, when they get it right at that level, which they do, it tends to spread out wide to the whole society. So my question is, would prioritizing key areas and focusing on them not be more productive than a multifarious or multifaceted approach?
Yeah, thank you, Okezie. And any other suggestions, observations? Because the elephant in the room still remains patriarchy. How do we dismantle and get this barrier of the room, so that then everybody can be able to have some opportunity to breathe? Oscar?
Thank you so much, Lizzy, for the wonderful presentation. A lot of light has been shown on the specific problems that has led to the bigger problem, and a number of suggestions. That was a wonderful presentation. I've heard what Kezie has asked, the fact that we could probably narrow down on specific interventions so that the results from the efforts are not dissipated. The problem with that is that the problem is not the same worldwide. And so you could pick on specific interventions, for example, the ones you've suggested, but which could only end up being beneficial to a specific area or country or region. And I think that's why Lizzy has proposed a number of strategies so that it is multifaceted, and so that Lizzy tries to give the big picture and what could be done worldwide. Of course, I agree with Kachi then that if it comes to Kenya, we could then pick on specific interventions based on our specific narrative, based on our approaches, based on the problems we have. But separately, Lizzy, I was going to ask, I've noted that you mentioned a number of suggested solutions, but which are largely external. They are largely left to other duty bearers, the governments or non-governmental organizations or men or other people, and a few or none at all in terms of solutions that should be women-led. What are women specifically supposed to do to deal with the problem of women involvement in community development? Do you have any specific suggestions? For example, should women also know it's their role that they should do all they can to get education? Should they understand that men also had these kind of barriers that they probably have, but probably overcame them through some specific interventions? Do you want to suggest to them to read from people like the former president of Liberia, the women who have trailblazed? Do you have specific interventions that so that in your next presentation we probably see a table on what men should do, and then another column on what women should do in dealing with the problems as identified, so that it's not left to others, and so that women also understand and appreciate that they have a role. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Let's hear Amidu and then Amelia, and then we can come back to Liz.
Okay, give her a chance to say something while I get a better place to talk.
Okay, Amelia.
I'm on France. Yeah.
Thank you, Lizzy. This was excellent to hear. And I'm working in rural areas in South Africa in a place called Lusikisiki. And we've done ABCD, which is asset-based community development in the area. And one of the things that we've picked up is that when we're developing in the tourism area, because we've got infrastructure, we've got roads that's coming in, the development of women is always is something that's left behind, because the men are more future looking. They are the ones that actually had opportunities before. But the women are the ones that's doing the social enterprises. They are the ones that's doing the agricultural type of things. They are the ones that's making sure that their children has got food on the table, that they go to schooling, etc. And now the women is coming in or are coming in, and they want to drive the development in the future. But we expect them now to go out of their community, to go to a business center to market their skills and their knowledge. They, most of the time, actually have to be at home because that's where they need it. And so we bring in a different type of way of thinking, but we need to accommodate women where they are. and ensure that we empower them through that. And I think I like what Janine is also suggesting, is that we use the assets. Men are assets that's working with us. So it's wonderful to say, all right, can we work then together so that we can help the women to still stay at home, but also be part of this formal, like in productive status and economic empowerment of women. So that's one thing that we've picked up. And then also, I think if we can have a more focused approach, like Kachi has said, and say, all right, now we are working with this bunch of women, how can we empower? They've got assets, for instance, in this area, and they said that the women came to me and said, we've got the banana plant. We can make sanitary pads in the area because we know we can, and we've got that. But how do we get funding so that we can do this? Because there's period poverty for children, women and girls, and we need to do awareness campaigns, etc. So, but now we don't know, where do we get funding? How do we take that to the next step and make sure that somebody assists these women with their creative ideas? And they actually illiterate. They can't read and write, but they've got the skills of the head and the heart and the hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia, and thank you for bringing the dimension of ABCD and the whole aspect again that all women are not the same, women are not homogeneous, and their issues, their problems, the challenges are also not the same. And so tying that to what Casey has said, then as we look for the high impact solution or intervention, then we possibly also need to look at how to target women at their different spaces and facing their different challenges that are unique to them wherever they are. And most important, the whole aspect of appreciating what they are doing to do the transformation, so that we don't move women from the spaces where they can be able to make all the difference and all the change to spaces where they will even, quote unquote, just get mesmerized and lost, and they may not even make any significant headway. And so looking at the different contexts, the spaces that women are in, and the range of resources that are available in their control, how do we augment that so that then we can have much more impact from what they're all doing? Then maybe let's come to Amidu, and then we get with Liz. Abdu, I hope you are in a better place to speak now. Okay, Liz, you can go.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I've listened very keenly, though I was in a public transport. Thank you very much, presenter. And I think you have given us what we can describe as a keynote address. A keynote address. A keynote address is an address that encompasses so many things on a broad platform. And I'm happy you have scratched or you have touched on so many aspects that we need to concentrate on. So if I can ask a question, now you have given us a very broad perspective. Now, if we are going to be specific within the context of Nigeria, where you come from, can we confidently say it is a culture or it is a system? Because as somebody who has a background in sociology, it is becoming very problematic to differentiate the culture and the system. Which one has more impact on community development? Considering the fact that community development is a grassroots development kind of issue, though that's narrowing the scope anyway. So I want you to quickly address that issue. And then once again, thank you very much for this exposition, because it will enable us and other practitioners to understand that the issue of community development is very, very broad, and then it needs a holistic and multifaceted intervention strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. Maybe let's go back now to Liz.
Thank you.
Comments.
Okay. Having listened to most of the comments and contributions, which I've tried to write down as much as I could, I know somebody said something about women-led solutions. I can't remember who said that. You know, how can women also help in this aspect? And while he was saying that, my thoughts went back to what Janine was saying, that we shouldn't do it in such a way that it becomes a loggerhead for a battle between men and women and so on. And I remember when she was saying that, I also mentioned that we could start from socialization right from the basics and so on. But in another way to try to make women to help in this situation is women groups, like I mentioned, and women that have made it should serve as mentors for the upcoming ones. I mean, for women should, I know a couple of women in Nigeria. I've forgotten her name right now. She's a mentor to a lot of women. These are the ones that their names are noised, that they have this and they have that. So these women that are successful in this, in whatever they are doing, should serve as mentors for others. Women should learn to assert themselves. They should assert. They should know. They should know the times we are in. They should know that these are modern times. These are times of technology. These are times have changed. Times have shifted. Even if situations around you is not allowing you to try to move forward, you try your best. These are things that women should be educated. Women should be sensitized. If there are ways to gather women together, they should be made to know this. This is different from women in the rural areas, but somebody also made a comment around here that how do you get women in the rural areas to be part of this something? Now, for that aspect, women in rural areas can also be helped. They can be helped. You don't necessarily have, even if they don't have education, there are ways that they can be trained. There are ways that they can be brought up to the same level. And in that way, I mentioned somewhere, I think Amelia said something about the informal sector. I know that women in the informal sector can be assisted. There is the introduction of the non-farm sector that is going on right now. Non-farm sector, these are the sectors that you don't really necessarily have to have land, you don't have to be in the field or something. Transportation, food business, tailoring, and so on. These are non-farm sectors where women can be encouraged. Loans can be given to them, not just by women organizations, but by the government. They should identify these women that are in these sectors and try to assist them, not just neglecting them, not just making them feel that they don't belong. It's from little ones that they do. They contribute to the development of the communities where they belong. So there should be encouragements, loans given to these women in the informal sector. They should not be, women with SMEs. These little things that women are doing, they should be encouraged. They can be trained. There should be training centers where women are gathered and be trained. And then they should be reorientated to know that they have all it takes to make it. Also, women should be targeted in their different spaces. Somebody mentioned it. What is done in Kenya or Nairobi or Uganda and so may not be what we apply in Nigeria. As the culture demands, so it should be addressed. There shouldn't be a blanket way of doing it. Just like Kachi Okezie said, I agree that we should, narrowing down to specific interventions, it's also quite important. Not just a blanket and of that. Let us have how it should operate in every society, which is different. Now, also going to the last, I think Dr. Hamidou said something about culture and system. I didn't quite get what he asked me, and I wish he can ask again. But community development is broad and holistic, like you said. The culture is part of the system. Every society has its own culture and a system of working. So community development, with the various definitions given, it includes the culture of whichever society is being practiced in. I don't know if I got what you said, but I don't mind if you ask me again, but I have been able to give answers as much as I could write down that they were asking me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Maybe now that Abdul is still around, let's not paraphrase for him. But when I got it, I was asking, what do we deal with? Is it the culture or is it with the system?
We should deal with both.
You can
Most
paraphrase
importantly, the system. Is it?
Amidu, you can come back. Okay, Amidu, you can come back when you are ready. But there is a question that has been placed by Janine, and what I alluded to, the whole issue of everything goes round and round, and we get back to patriarchy. And in as much as we are going to sensitize women and make them aware and create all the spaces, but then if the big elephant of patriarchy is still on the way, we still have a big challenge, and I don't know how we can address it. And taking into account we come from diverse backgrounds across the continent, how can we deal with the issue of patriarchy so that ultimately then everybody can have a fair chance to participate in development, be they women, be they men?
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, this issue of patriarchy has been there. It's as old as anything you can think about. It's been spoken about, it's been addressed, but it's still not moving. What I'm thinking is that if there would come a time, and it's coming very soon, where this thing will dissipate by itself. The times we are in now does not call for somebody to sit at home and fold his or her hands. There's a situation that we'll get to, and countries and societies will begin to know that women should be allowed to participate in most things. This issue of patriarchy, we can talk about it from today till tomorrow. It's been overflowed, but it's not moving anywhere. I just want to say that it's coming to a time when the issue of patriarchy will address itself, and it's very soon.
Maybe you could elaborate. That's a nice one. That patriarchy will deal with it, will resolve itself, or we still need to have some.
It may not be very easy, but what I'm saying is that where we are today is different from where we were 10, 20 years back. In the 70s, things were not as it is now. In most countries, I don't know about other countries, but I know about the country where I stay in Nigeria. The tables are turning. You are having a lot of female-headed households. You understand what I'm saying? A lot of women are, in fact, it's even reversed now. There are a lot of men that are not with jobs. Women are the ones taking charge. So how will it be that a woman is, and this is creating the issues we are afraid to talk about, gender-based violence. So these things, it must be taken care of. It cannot be forced. This issue of patriarchy, there's nowhere it's written. Most of the societies will begin to change. It may not be now, it may be in 10, 20 years' time, but I'm sure we get there. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you. And okay, we can leave it for a natural process, for patriarchy to downgrade itself and to become irrelevant over time. But then as community practitioners, in some cases, ours is to extend the process of change or to address some of the injustices which we don't want the passage of time to deal with, given that justice need not to be delayed. And so that's still a challenge for us to find ways of interrogating patriarchy and claiming and fashioning some tools, interventions, which can help us then find some space so that the guardians of and beneficiaries of patriarchy can cede some of the spaces so that everybody can be able to breathe. Any further comment, observation?
I'm satisfied with the response. I'm satisfied with the response given by Lizzy on the role that women can play. That was a good one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course, we still need to be aware about the whole process of conditioning, where through process of conditioning, people get used to a certain level of comfort and operation. And until the window is opened and then they are told that they are free, they can fly. And in some of the cases, some of the situations, that's what the socialization does. And so we can end up blaming people who are actually just conditioned to operate at that level until we tell them and make them to believe that actually they can fly and they can get out of the spaces that they are in. And that means resocialization and also reconstruction of the way we organize some of the systems in our communities and in our societies. Yeah, we've made some announcement. The World Community Development Conference 2023 is underway in June in Darwin, Australia. Early bird registration is available for IACD members getting a discount, and also submission of proposals is open. Let's take a big delegation from this continent and be part of the discussion in Australia during the World Community Development Conference 2023. We have all the time to put in our proposals and also to arrange the logistics. Of course, it costs some bit of fortune to go down there, but Africa is also the richest continent. So we need also to be present and to be counted. Then we can be part of the discussion to push the debate and the discussion, all the connections that are embedded in our network IACD down under in South Africa. The next for us is a presentation by all of us in December. It's an open forum. So all of us will be presenters. Let's meet, review what has happened over the year, and also focus and vision how we want to move forward in the coming year. And so that's what will be happening in the December space, the second Wednesday of December. Welcome on board. Let's purpose to be there so that then we can be able to shape our conversation as the network of community development practitioners in sub-Saharan Africa. Then in January, we are scheduled to have a discussion on corruption and community development. Another elephant in the room, just like patriarchy, because barely this continent do talk about issues, development, and the issue of corruption not surfacing. And so let's have that conversation. In February, we'll be talking about community development and children. Most of the time, we've been taken the space and said, okay, it is us to do community development. The adults, the big people, quote unquote. But there's also a lot that is happening, community development with children. And so that will be the presentation and the discussion for February. In March, we are revisiting the issue of culture. We need to anchor again community development on culture. And so that again will be the discussion in March, recentering community development on culture. Because much of what we have been talking about, if we interrogate our cultural processes and the way our communities function, then we find there's a lot of community development taking place. But most of the time, we are trying to reinvent the wheel, to reinvent the processes of addressing concerns of communities. That is the discussion in March. In April, I'm inviting presenters. You have a topic of interest, just get in touch, we'll schedule you. It is your presentation. It is you to shape it and deliver it. And so get in touch, we schedule you. Unless there is another comment, observation, the floor is open. My colleagues from the IACD Trustee Board, Janine, any comment, any observation?
No, I've just said thank you to Lizzy for generating such a great discussion. I think it's something that we certainly can't solve or finalize in an hour and a half. It's an ongoing decades-long, generations-long discussion, but it's always good to air these thoughts and to just, yeah, connect together. Thank you, Lizzy.
Thank you.
And thank you, Daniel, and Meredith as well for hosting the platform.
Okay, thank you. And just a final one. We've been talking about establishing networks and at a regional level, or in some cases at country level, so that we can be better organized and be better able to respond to the needs of the members. And again, that still remains our challenge in our countries and in our regions, sub-regions, so that then we can be able to better address some of the regional concerns or specific concerns that are country specific, even as we network at this level, at the sub-Saharan African level. So let's continue, and I think this is going to be a discussion again. We revisit in December. So thank you very much and enjoy the remainder of your day. Please have a good night. So
Thank
late
you.
for you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
So much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kachi.